ship to ever wash up on the shore. You could spend your whole
Thanks, Sandra. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Committee of the Whole and Planning Board and Special Council meetings here of November 4th, 2025. We'll begin with our Planning Board. We'll follow with our Committee of the Whole meeting at 5:30, and then our Special Council meeting will follow the Committee of the Whole meeting. With that, I will call to order the Planning Board meeting of November 4th, 2025 here in the City of Summerside at 5:02 p.m. Members of Planning Board, for members of the public, Councillors Trenholm, Doiron, Adams, and myself. I will ask for one of the members of the Planning Board to move and another to second the Planning Board agenda before you tonight. Moved by Councillor Adams, second Councillor Doiron. Any changes, revisions from members of Planning Board? Seeing and hearing none, we will carry on. We begin each one of our meetings here at the City of Summerside by acknowledging the land upon which we gather is unceded Mi'kmaq territory. Abbotsford is covered by the historic treaties of peace and friendship. With that, I'll ask for any member of council to declare a conflict of interest with respect to the single item tonight on the Planning Board agenda. Seeing and hearing none, we'll move on right to the recommendation while I hand it over to our Chair of Planning Board, Councillor Doiron. Councillor.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. Recommendation for Planning Board is the naming of a street, a private street, off Kember Street. The background, the owner-developer, 102454 PEI Inc., Nathan Kember, wishes to propose street names for the private street off Kember Street. The developer is requested to submit 3 names for consideration in order of preference in efforts to avoid conflicts within our fire and police service emergency 911 area. The developer has proposed Prestige, Matthias, and Silas for consideration for the proposed street off Kember Street. The proposed name Prestige relates to a business in the area owned by the developer. The proposed name Matthias and Silas are names in honor of the developer's children. The process for choosing a street name that is not on the approved street name list shall make application to council. And that process from section 2 of street naming. To A, any person who wishes to use a name that is not on the approved street name list shall make application to council therefore, and council shall approve or deny the application by simple resolution based on 1, the recommendation of the street naming committee, 2, the conformance of the proposed name with this policy, and 3, any other considerations that council considers relevant. The developer was requested to submit 3 names for consideration in order of preference. Once again, the names are as follows: Prestige, Matthias, and Silas. As required under the Emergency 911 Act, the city is a designated municipality and is responsible for assigning civic addresses. A public road must be named if it provides access to 3 or more improved properties. As per Schedule B, the street naming policy of the Site Development and Subdivision Bylaw, any person who wishes to use a name that is not on the approved street name list shall make application to council, and council shall approve or deny by simple resolution. And the street naming committee review. The committee has reviewed the proposed street names. The street suffix will be avenue as per the street naming policy. The proposed street names noted above conform with the street naming policy. Based on the developer's order of preference, the street name Prestige is being forwarded for consideration. As per the street naming policy, council will approve or deny the name being forwarded for consideration. While the street naming policy process does not require a review and recommendation from the planning board regarding street naming, it has been the city's practice to vet proposed street names other than those on the approved street name list to planning board for discussion. And the planning board recommendation, the proposed street name Prestige be recommended to be approved by council. Moved by myself, and I would ask for a seconder from Planning Board, Councillor Adams. Are there any questions? And if not, we'll just ask for a simple vote from Planning Board members only. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none. So that is that, and I'll turn it back over to Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor. So we will now adjourn our planning board meeting at 5:06 PM, setting a new record at the city of Summerside for the shortest meeting in history. And we will take a recess for 24 minutes until our committee of the whole meeting begins at 5:30. As we advise members of the public, it starts at 5:30, so we will do so. So if you're joining online, we will shut that off for a slight while, and I think, no, we're going to keep it running? It keeps running? Okay. All right, we'll take a recess till 5:30, and we'll start with our committee of the whole meeting. Thanks, everyone.
Created. Would you be there to answer the knock on the door? And all the things in life we said we'd do tomorrow have washed up with the sands of yesterday. So if there's something inside you that still feels hollow, you will be just fine. Little voice in my head, it keeps saying you'd be better off dead, but I know it will be just fine. Slip right in to this dream. This life is just a waking breath in some big scheme, and I know it will be just fine. It will be just, it will be just fine. let your mama love you too long. It'll make you weak instead of strong. What's righteous might be wrong, and what looks good ain't always best. When it's time to leave the nest, if you fail to pass the test, you'll be just like all the rest, and you'll be sorry. Don't let your mama feed you too much. She might get you in her clutches and be just a pair of crutches that you have to throw away. Then one sad day when your hair is turned to gray, you'll remember what I said and you'll be sorry. Now's the time to go before the cold wind starts to blow in any further in your bones. Now's the time to know if you've got half the strength to show, you'll surely make it all on your own. Don't let your mama catch you giving in. If you wait for too much longer, those old apron strings get stronger and the feeling of your sin. Then the one you idolize won't be there to dry your eyes. She'll be somewhere in the skies without worry. Now's the time to go before the cold wind starts to blow in any further in your bones. Now's the time to know if you've got half the strength to show, you'll surely make it all on your own. Don't let your mama love you too long. It'll make you weak instead of strong. What's righteous might be wrong, and what looks good ain't always best. When it's time to leave the nest, if you fail to pass the test, you'll be just like all the rest, and you'll be sorry. You'll be sorry. You'll be sorry. You'll be sorry. Darkness falls, leaving shadows in the night. Don't be afraid, wipe that fear from your eyes. If a desperate love keeps on driving you wrong, don't be afraid, you're not alone. You can run with us. We've got Pick up the telephone, and there's no one on the line. Don't be afraid, 'cause there's still time. You can run with us. We've got everything you need. Run with us. We are free. Come with us. I see passion in your eyes. Run with us. We are free. I know, but I'm slipping back again. But you look so pretty in the wind. I'd swim a river, stop a gale in full blow, before she would love me. This is what I know. Broken town's not good, but you would leave walls before crumbled dust. I'd swim a river, stop a gale in full blow, before she would love me. This is what I know. Why would I ever hope of your embrace? But there was something in that gaze. I'd swim a river, stop a gale in full blow, before she would love me. This is what I know.
to the water. Oh, wash me clean tonight. Woo! Hold me close now against your body. Oh, make me believe I am the one. And I promise to hang up my sixth string, 'cause all my traveling is done. Hold me close now against your body. Oh, make me believe I am the one. And I promise to hang up some memories, 'cause all my traveling is done. Woo! 55 years have gone since I've been alone. 55 years of you still fill this home. But today somebody stopped the clocks, close the curtains against the sun, and it felt colder somehow. Took my hand 55 years ago, the day you made me a man. I lay there trembling, didn't quite know what to do, but you held me softly, whispering, I love you. "55 years or more, I've never slept alone, and the space beside me now doesn't feel like it should. But I close my eyes and I'm holding you, 'cause don't you see, I know every inch of you. After 55 years, my love, oh anybody know my name? 55 years from now, will anybody know my pain? But for now I'm finding comfort in the little things I see all around this loving home you shared with me, my love, 55 years or more. 55 years ago, 55 years from now. Come take my hand, we'll move across this floor, we'll dance in time, right out the door. So keep with me the rhythm, the reason and the rhyme. Keep with me, my love, for the rest of time. We'll walk forever through this world and on, for they can't take our love, though your memories have gone. I'll carry them for you, so gentle yet strong. I'll carry you, my wife. Let this be not our last song. So keep with me the rhythm, the reason and the rhyme. Keep with me, my love, for the rest of time.
Great, thanks, Andrew. Welcome back, or welcome to our Committee of the Whole meeting here of November 4th, 2025 in the city of Summerside here at our beautiful downtown Summerside City Hall. I'll call the meeting to order here at 5:32 p.m. I call for a motion from council mover and a seconder to approve the agenda as presented. Moved by Councillor McColeman, seconded by Deputy Mayor Snow. Any changes, revisions? Hearing none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed or changes or revisions? Hearing none, we'll move ahead. Opportunity for any member of council to declare a conflict of interest with respect to any item on the agenda tonight. Seeing and hearing none, we'll move directly into committee reports and recommendations. We will start with 4A, Finance Committee. Chair, Councillor MacDougall.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do have a bit of a report here. Our 2024-25 financial statements have been posted to our website. The following policies have been drafted and reviewed for future discussion with Council. Debt management policies, one for general tax fund and one for utilities. We plan to present these policies to Council in December. The community support policy, we plan to present Council in November. Two charts, one on service adjustments and the other on strategic priorities, have been developed from the service level review completed in October. We plan to present to Council in November sometime for acceptance. And I do have a recommendation coming from our last finance meeting, and it's a capital campaign contribution request from Generation XX, and has requested $50,000 contribution to their capital campaign for Phase 2 of their renovation project. Generation XX, represented by Aaron Jackson and Gordy Whitlock, made a presentation to Council, and the request was referred to the Finance Committee for discussion and recommendation. Contributions to the capital projects have been made in the past fiscal years to nonprofit organizations. The City of Summerside has not made a capital contribution to Generation XX for this latest capital project, Phase 1 or Phase 2. So I'll be forwarding that on to the council meeting for approval or denial, whichever. Thank you.
Sorry, Councilor, do it, just reading the backside, yeah.
I'm sorry, yes. So the Finance Committee recommends that the council inform Generation XX that the contribution of $50,000 will be provided to be dispersed in 2 equal installments of $25,000 each over the next 2 fiscal years, 26-27 and 27-28. These payments from the City of Summerside must be applied solely towards Generation XX share of the capital expenditures that were not covered by infrastructure funding for the renovation project. Sorry about that.
No problem. Thank you, Councillor. So open floor, obviously, if any member of council will provide any feedback or discussion on the recommendation. The recommendation, as Councillor MacDougall said, will come via resolution to council at the next council meeting.
Right.
So Councillor MacDougall.
Councillor
Did
McColeman?
you say in the year 26, 27?
Yes, and
And
27-28.
Okay, great, thank you.
Great. I don't see any other lights, so thank you, Council. Thank you, Councillor MacDougall. We'll now move on to Chair of Bylaw and Governance Committee for an update from Councillor McColeman. Councillor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to thank CAO JP DeRosier for preparing this information. The Bylaw Governance Committee has been focused on reviewing and modernizing several of the city's key bylaws, and at the November upcoming meeting, staff will be presenting proposed updates to the Code of Conduct and the procedural bylaws, which are 2 critical documents that form the foundation of our governance and decision-making processes. Once the committee has reviewed and provided feedback, these proposed changes will come before council for discussion and consideration. While that work is underway, staff will move on to the next set of priorities and updates to the vacant premises, unsightly premises, and enforcement bylaws. These 3 work hand in glove and are designed to give staff and council stronger tools to address problem properties within our community. The goal is to have all 5 of these bylaws updated by the end of January, after which time the committee will begin reviewing the next round of bylaws identified as priorities. They're really taking the time to really check other bylaws that are on the books in other municipalities so that we just get the wording and everything so that it'll work with all of our other bylaws. On behalf of the committee, as chair, I would like to thank staff and our external legal counsel for the detailed, line-by-line work that continues behind the scenes. It is painstaking work, but it is vital to strengthening the overall governance and operations of our organization. And that concludes the report.
Comments, questions for Chair of Bylaw and Governance? Seeing none, we'll move on. I do have if that's okay, I'd like to just jump back really quickly. I just have a quick question for Councillor MacDougall or suggestion. One, and maybe to Councillor McColeman as well to a certain degree, and maybe others. It may be valuable for council to, if it's possible, to send, you mentioned the debt management policies for general fund utilities, the community support stuff. It may be valuable to send that in advance of a meeting package to council, so council has time to find the time as well to make sure to go through those. And then the second would be just generally, as those items come to council and before they come for a vote at council, it would probably be useful to make sure that those go out in a public forum to get in the package, but also to members of the public to get feedback from members of the community before council ultimately makes a decision, just to help get other eyes on the policies. Councillor
So,
McColeman?
Your worship, I just wondered, so you're talking about the actual report that we just gave, if that was in the documents and sent out earlier?
So no, I'm talking about, I'll use the example of the debt management policy for the general fund from finance as an example, to have that sent out to council in advance when it's ready. I think it's close. And then to look at opportunities to maybe put that out in the public forum to get feedback before it ultimately gets adopted. We've been doing that a lot with a lot of the great work that everyone here has been doing, and just continuing to increase the opportunity for members of the public to engage if they wish on the good work that everyone's doing. Moving on to Planning Committee Chair, Councillor Doiron.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. Fairly brief update tonight. Our committee met last Thursday. Staff completed their consultations with area developers, and so we were just spending our time focusing on tying up the final loose ends on our draft complete streets policy. We should have a presentation ready for council for our December monthly council meeting, and hopefully at that time council will be able to provide direction and hopefully have something adopted for the 2026 development construction season. So we'll meet everybody back here in December for our presentation that staff worked very, very hard on. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Any further questions for Chair Planning Board, Councillor Doiron? Hearing none, we'll move on to Councillor Adams, Chair of Action Plan for Safer Communities. Councillor?
Thank you, Worship. Safer Communities, we had our open house and it went very well. It was well attended, and it was really interesting to see. It was people of all ages, and so it was nice. We got a large variance of things that people were seeing and what they were interested in seeing happen in the city. So that went really well, and the meetings with the stakeholder groups are being set up. And this week, later this week, some of the members of the Safer Communities Committee are attending a congress that's being held in Halifax. Yeah, so they're looking forward to that. So other than that, I don't have much to report back, just some work being done with the members of the public.
Thank you, Councillor. Any questions for Chair Adams? Seeing here none. Move on to Parks and Green Spaces Plan update from Councillor Trenholm, and I think there is a destination park survey report that is included in the council package as well. Well, I'm sure there is. I read it over there. Councillor.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so I guess 2 points. One is that the RFP went out. The deadline was on Halloween, and we didn't have anybody respond to it, so I think we're just looking at right now, should we put another one, should we revise it, or can it be handled internally? So I think that's where we are right now in terms of making that decision point. The other point is, yes, there's a destination park survey. So a part of the survey we did, which had 319 respondents, one question, which I would say probably received maybe the most controversy, I suppose, the most interest. And the question is listed in the entire report's there, but just for everybody listening, the question was worded in this way. The City of Summerside is considering the creation of 1 to 2 larger destination parks by repurposing some smaller neighborhood parks into green spaces or other community uses. The rationale is that consolidating resources would allow the city to focus more on its limited budget, on upgrading equipment, adding features, and improving the overall quality of a few larger parks rather than spreading investments thinly across many smaller sites. So the overwhelming majority of people supported that. So if you're looking at 3 out of 4 residents, they supported that. Now, we divided from very supportive to somewhat supportive to not supportive at all, or just uncertain. So if we can say that 10% were uncertain, 12.2 outrightly didn't support it. 34 somewhat supported it with some concerns, but very supportive was 42%. So again, if we take the very supportive and the somewhat supportive, it's 77.1% of the survey, which is quite a majority would be like that. And totally unsupportive would be 12, and I guess just with questions and concerns would be 10, just uncertain, and need to have more information. So again, I'm not going to, by any chance, read the entire report, but I just do want to highlight that just other key findings, other than those percentages, were that we did an online survey, but also the staff did a Leisure Park. They were there. So in terms of looking at the data from there, Leisure Park, whoever went to Leisure Park were more strongly related to supporting it, destination parks, than the others. Still, they were all supportive, but Leisure was more. So it came in at 52.2 versus 41.9, and that is very strong, like hands down, very strong support. Gender differences, basically there was not really any gender difference. And when I'm talking gender, I also want to be clear that there was more than male and female available for the survey, but we only had one individual listed as non-binary, so we can't really highlight on one statistic there. Men, 79%, and women, 75%. Again, very supportive. Women are twice as likely than men to be unsure and to seek more information. So it's 12.3 to 7.2. So, and residents, doing the survey in the manner we did allows us to split up those Summerside residents versus people who live out of the city, which is really important when we're looking at data analysis. So in terms of looking at this, Summerside residents, in terms of support, we know it was 70, 73, but there's 24 points lower than, let's say, non-residents. So non-residents were like 97%, like they were really supportive, whereas non-residents weren't as supportive, and for obvious reasons that if it does mean that taking the park away that's next door to me, it's an issue, or it's a concern. I want more information as opposed to a non-resident who would be looking at more as a community amenity, an opportunity there to have some fun and explore a park. Age group differences, middle age, and we're most supportive. So residents aged 25 to 65, especially the 55 to 65, showed the highest enthusiasm. The stats surprised me a little. Youth under 18, as well as seniors 65 and above, showed the most concern and non-support. And some of the data is looking at, well, it's because both of those age groups may not have access to a vehicle, and so walking becomes an issue with having a park close to your residence. So I won't go into any more detail, but suffice to say that there was really powerful comments too, even the ones that say like we don't support it, and there's understanding and value in every person who took time to complete it. And essentially the people, the small portion who aren't supportive of it are looking at, well, if you're taking the park away, what does all that mean? What does all that mean? What park and usage? So it's a strong mandate, I would say, from the survey. I'll read the final words of the report just here. The majority of residents are supportive of the idea of creating 1 or 2 destination parks by repurposing neighborhood parks. However, support remains qualified by a need for more information, particularly regarding which parks might be repurposed, what repurposing would look like in practice, and where new destination parks would be located. Lastly, the results of this survey suggest that residents are receptive to the concept, but expect ongoing transparency, engagement, and equitable planning, encouraging the city to begin exploring destination parks while keeping residents informed and involved at every stage of the process. So I think that's pretty clear that they want to be involved and engaged, but it's also moving forward to what that can look like. So it's survey results would say we're keen. So I think bringing that to the committee and what does that mean when you look at the RFP or how we're going to develop our plan. We want to develop our new plan and join it with the results of what the public are asking for. So looking forward to seeing all that take shape. But I think this is definitely a positive report and a positive result for the city. Thanks. Any questions, I guess?
Thank you, Councillor. Any questions for Councillor Trenholm? Councillor McColeman.
I would be interested, not maybe necessarily in the public, but would we be able to get a copy of some of the comments so that we would be aware? Should we be asked by residents, or if, it would just really help us, I think, just to be informed. What are some of the real positive or concerns?
Yeah, very
the
much.
questions come up.
That's right. And so the report was written with that in mind.
Yeah.
It's in mind to make sure that every comment that was captured by the residents is indicated in the survey and the question. So if you do pull out the report, you'll notice that verbatim, the comments are there. So the ones that are supportive, the ones that are just neutral or supportive of the destination park but didn't lean either way on being not supportive or not supportive, and the ones, and I say, they articulate very well the concerns on both sides. Right, so it's well worth an important read, I think, just to get a sense. And there's a few comments there. I'd say they can really articulately spell out what the issue would be for them, and I think for us as a council too. What do we want to keep in mind? So, great question, Councillor McColeman.
Thank you, Councillor Trenholm. I don't see any other lights, so no further questions there. Discussion. Looking forward to that work coming to council again in the future, the bigger piece. Councillor Cameron, Chair of our Youth Advisory Committee. Councillor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Myself and Director Kendrick Gunn had a meeting with 9 students a couple weeks ago. It was a great first meeting with lots of good conversation and ideas. Right now, these students were sent home with the task of working on what they would like a mandate to look like. So our next meeting, we will come together with 9 different mandates and try to consolidate those down to one mandate. So I'm very interested to see what 9 teenagers come up with for a mandate.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Any questions for Chair Cameron? Seeing hearing none. Councillor Cameron, I'm glad you don't have to say we're waiting until September anymore. So that's great.
Me too.
We'll move on to Deputy Mayor Snow, Chair of our Downtown Transformation Group.
Thank you, Worship. No real new significant update from the last time, but I will say it is impressive to just drive through the downtown and see the work being done to various buildings, the construction happening on certain key projects. Recently we had some developers come forward trying to identify some other key projects within the downtown, which is important to the growth and transformation of the downtown. And then looking at some of the older buildings, I'm thinking of what I would call the Bell Alliant building and the significant work being done to maintain that building that's been happening over the last 5 or 6, 7 weeks, and just seeing that investment starting to trickle into the downtown is key. So some stuff will be coming back to council hopefully in the real near future, but yeah, things are continuing to look promising in the downtown.
Thank you, Deputy Snow. Any questions for Deputy Mayor Snow? Seeing here none, we keep going. Electric Utility Governance Review. Councillor Morrison is away, traveling with family. Councillor MacDougall is going to provide a very brief update, I think.
Yeah. Thank you, Your Worship. We have our meeting this month, and we'll be having one next month, but there's a presentation later here this evening, and yeah, that's all I have to report. Basically. Nothing to report.
Thank you, Councillor. It's a good one for Rick to miss. Go on to Councillor Cameron, Chair of Smart City Initiative Service Delivery.
Thank you, Your Worship. We recently closed the application process for public appointment to the committee, so we will be reviewing those to make recommendations for appointments. I also had the opportunity to do a CBC interview to kind of clarify the purpose of the committee, that we are creating policy around the usage of AI for when it is implemented into the city, and we are, as a committee, not investing money in infrastructure for AI. We are making sure that it is used appropriately when the time comes for the usage of AI. So I thought that that was an important thing to clarify going forward. And that's it.
I just wondered, Councillor Cameron, on the service delivery and AI, will there be an opportunity for residents, if they have questions or they're not sure of something, will there be something public for residents to be able to take part in if they have questions?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that's very important. I think that there is still a lot of work to be done before we get to that point. But as we move forward and start coming up with ideas around policy, I think that's when it's really important to put it out to the public to get feedback on where we stand with that internally and externally as the public, and go from there. Yeah.
Just, the reason why I asked that, I wasn't aware, but I know that there are some residents that are really following AI.
Yeah.
And just had asked if that was going to be the case, and sent some video clips and things like that, so I said I would check on it.
Yeah, absolutely, and I always welcome feedback on any committee that I am chairing or on, so if anyone had any feedback, I'm more than welcome to hear it now, or when the time comes when we do a public open house of some sort as well.
Great. Any further questions for Chair Cameron? And great job on the interview, Councillor Cameron. I don't know, is it on the podcast as well? Yeah, it is? The full-length one? Awesome. No, it's really good. We'll move on to our next one, Councillor Trenholm, the lead on our Seniors Engagement and Equity Directive, known as SEED.
Yes,
Thank you, Ken.
there's lots of busy bees out there. That's all I want to say, doing the seed work. I'm really impressed with the work that's been done so far. I have submitted, and I would ask that for the report, the update to be put into the minutes. I submitted an update as of this morning, nice and bright and early. So as of right now, there's 117 completed surveys. So 72 have been online and 45 have been in paper. So in the report it lists where exactly those have been found. I'm definitely, I think lots of perhaps people have said, well, I mean, maybe you don't even need to have an online survey, but I think the data is showing us that there's more seniors that are online than maybe people perceive to be. Not everybody by all means, but I think it's important numbers to look at. We've also had a number of common room meetings. So basically in 2 weeks, there's been 8 meetings. That's a lot of meetings. So the common room would be, there's many seniors buildings and complexes in the city. They would have a common room, and so there'd be a member of 2 to meet in the common room with the individuals and identifying what's working well in the city and what would like to have improved. So I can highlight that there are, at this point, 9 additional meetings that are scheduled coming up, and I'll just mention a few that are coming up maybe tomorrow and this week. Is that if you by chance live at 225 Linden, you're going to be at 10 o'clock tomorrow. Nice little meeting for you there to participate in the seed, as well as Andrews of Summerside on Pope is also going to happen tomorrow at 10 as well, and then Saturday at 10 if you're at 22 Frank Mellor. So if anybody's listening and you haven't got notice of this, you can reach out to me and I'll give you details, and we'd love to see you there to have what you have to say. And of course our community focus groups, so just briefly, on Friday the 21st and on Tuesday the 29th at 9:30, we're going to have 2 community focus groups. Wilmot Community Center on Friday the 21st and St. Elmhurst on Tuesday the 25th. At this point, we should have obtained a lot of information, a wealth of information, and we can use the community's help to perhaps help us prioritize. What do the community see, and to aid in understanding for the committee in terms of being able to develop a strategy. I'm really encouraged by that because it's the community are giving us the information, the seniors are, and now we're going to put the ball back in the seniors' hands as well and say, let's help us prioritize, because I can tell you there's a lot of things on the agenda right now. A lot of needs have been identified, and so having them to help sort out the process of how to prioritize, I think will be beneficial. I think for everybody involved, to be honest with you, because it's realizing what everybody wants to do. Maybe we have to shortlist that, and maybe we have to say immediately and later on. So I'm looking forward to that. But suffice to say, this committee is working extremely well, and it certainly is a pleasure to be on the team. And when I say team, I also mean not just the committee. If you could look at people that are staff who have done a considerable amount of work behind the scenes, they're also helping out a lot as well. So I appreciate everybody and all efforts. It's definitely appearing to be a pretty well-oiled mechanism that's getting out in the community right now, and definitely a pleasure to chair it. So, yeah, thank you.
Any questions for Chair Trenholm? Seeing here none. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Council. A lot of great work underway, and thanks, of course, to the staff and people behind the chairs who are doing so much of the work as well. We'll now move on to staff reports and recommendations. We have we have a presentation here from Director Greg Goody and Garrett Webster, who is a senior electrical engineer with the City of Summerside Electric Utility. They are making a presentation this evening with respect to providing council with a recommendation to consider moving forward with purchasing new generation assets. The presentation will be made tonight, and then at the next council meeting, there'll be a specific recommendation supported by a resolution for council to consider. So at this point, I'll hand it over to you, Director Goody, and to you, Mr. Webster.
Sorry. Yep. To remind the committee and what leads us here today. So a bit of that was to go back in 2019, there was a Dunsky capacity report given for Summerside Electric, which set a path forward for about 2024. And in that period of time, staff took that and initiated a lot of the projects in there. And the latest one being completed being our Sunbank solar and battery project in 2024, roughly. So that led us now to 2025. So prior to 2024 ending, we engaged Dunsky again to do a look at what the next options were for Summerside Electric to meet our electricity demand in the near critical term for the city of Summerside. We had 2 open houses during that process to engage the public, and then the final report came to council in September of 2025. At that time, it was said staff would come back with a recommended plan in the near critical term options we have as Summerside Electric. And that's really what we're here to talk about today. And that plan that's on the internet, City of Summerside website and the meeting agenda minutes, takes us out to about 2030. So with that, I'll pass the presentation over to Garrett. He'll lead us through some of the outcomes of what are needed and some Dunsky recommendations.
Welcome everybody. You can go to the next first slide there, Greg. So real briefly here today, I'm going to touch on at a high level how utilities use their power. This is the energy versus capacity conversation. I'll move into a little bit about where we are for our current status today and our forecast needs into the future, as well as some of the outcomes of our Dunsky report and our future plans, which we are starting the recommendations here tonight, and for council, some of the decisions and next steps that we need to make here in the city of Summerside. So to start things off, every electric utility around the world has 2 primary factors that they're always trying to balance, and that's the energy versus capacity conversation. Most people are familiar with energy. That's what you see on your monthly electric bill, how many kilowatt hours your home has consumed and you get billed for. On the right-hand side there, you can see, as an example, a typical home's load profile in gray and red. That's the amount of energy they use. If a home has solar panels and net metering, the green is their surplus of energy during the day. They typically sell that to the grid or trade it to the grid, and they get the energy back during the nighttime hours. The capacity is a single moment in time, your peak need. As a homeowner, if I'm installing electrical panels, I'm trying to get cheap electricity and cheap fuel, cheap energy. But the size of my system, I need a 100 amp panel or a 200 amp panel. That's your capacity requirement to the home, which is how many electric devices you have connected. Electric cars, electric heat, TVs, computers, and everything else in between. Next slide there. So, as I started mentioning there, the primary cost of energy to a utility and to a homeowner is the cost of the fuel. We're collecting solar fuel, we're collecting wind fuel, or we're collecting fossil fuels, and we're making that into electricity. At a home scale, we're collecting solar on your rooftop and using that as your energy in your home. The primary cost to capacity is the infrastructure. That's the power plants. You need a 200 amp panel in your house, and that's an infrastructure cost to your house, but you're not necessarily needing all 200 amps for every hour of the day. The power plants are the exact same. A comparison to that is also your transportation energy as a household. So this typical suburban home, they have a small compact car that they use for fuel efficiency, driving around town, doing most of their traveling. That's their energy savings. But this home also has a big camper van that they need to tow around. So for that, they need large infrastructure to be able to pull that camper van around, so they need a pickup truck. Because of how infrequently you need the pickup truck, you don't want a very expensive pickup truck. You want low cost and low maintenance for the few times a year you're going to need it, but you're primarily going to use the fuel efficient car. The electric grid is the same. This is how we use wind and solar today and our existing power plant today. Yep. So where we're at today, we get approximately 55 to 60% of our energy from our renewable portfolio here in Summerside. This is our own wind farm, our West Cape wind farm, and our new Sunbank solar farm. On the capacity side of it, because of how intermittent these resources are, they have a lot lower capacity value. These capacity values are not set by Summerside, they are set by New Brunswick system operators. Solar energy by itself has 0% capacity value to the power grid because there's a 0% chance that the sun will be shining in the middle of the night. We installed a battery at Sunbank, so we do get some capacity value from the battery, but it's on a time clock of only about 4 hours. Our wind farm is good for about 30% capacity. That is reducing. You're fine. Yeah. The other 46% of our energy we purchase from New Brunswick, and for capacity, we purchase about 22% of our capacity from New Brunswick to make up the rest of this. The real interesting one that we're here talking about today is the power plant. Just as I was explaining with that truck trying to tow the camper van, we only use the power plant 0.1% of the time here in Summerside today. But its value is 42% of our capacity needs as a city. And we have a small sliver of capacity for buildings like here, City Hall, that has backup generator as well. So, in talking about our existing infrastructure and its status and age, this is the table of our existing power plant. The items in red are 3 of our engines that are from the 1950s and the 1960s. They're getting fairly old. We're in the process right now of repairing and refurbishing a few of them. They don't make parts for these anymore. We're actually fabricating and machining a lot of the components nowadays. We built our new wind assets. In green there, as you can see, we've got our own wind at 9 megawatts, and West Cape, or our own is 12 and West Cape is 9. But for capacity, as set by New Brunswick, they're only worth 3 or 3 and a bit. The Sunbank solar, we've got the battery in yellow at 5 megawatts, but the solar farm 21 is worth 0 to capacity. And the remainder of our capacity, we purchase from New Brunswick. As you can see, and as we've experienced earlier in the winter, this is one of our existing engines that we rely on in our power plant. Our capacity assets being connected locally to ourselves is not just the benefit of our own financial needs and how we operate the power grid, it provides us the bonus benefit that we can provide backup power to the city in times of crisis. So now let's talk about how much more do we need to grow. This is the analysis that Dunsky performed and we agree with. We've done our own similar analysis. The blue line is how much capacity we needed in the past. The blue bar up and to the right is the forecast needs of the future. Depending if it's a mild or a cold winter, it might be at the low or the high end of that blue bar. The black line is our existing engines, our existing wind and batteries. You can see it starts dropping off as these old engines need to be retired and replaced with something. The gray bar is how much we are currently importing and purchasing from New Brunswick. One more click there. This dashed black line we just added, this is the absolute maximum that we can get from New Brunswick. The limiting factor here is undersea cables and what's available in New Brunswick itself. The undersea cables today can provide more, but New Brunswick cannot. So the forecast right now is showing, even if we max out what we can get from New Brunswick, in about 5 years' time, we're going to be in a pinch. So we need to start making investments here and decisions today. Dunsky themselves wrote in their report 3 key takeaways. The demand for electricity is expected to continue to grow. We are seeing significant population growth in Summerside. We are seeing significant adoption of heat pumps and oil to electric conversions, electric vehicles as well, and new demands on the grid from net metering and renewables. There is a critical near-term gap in how much electricity will be needed and what Summerside Electric will be able to supply. This is that 5-year window we are working with. And Summerside Electric must invest in new capacity resources immediately to manage this gap and close it. You can go ahead, yeah.
So in the public engagement piece with the generator open houses, we did an exercise of what was important to the community and try to represent, and councils, this report has previously been submitted, but the top 3 components were important for us to focus in on, which was nobody wanted to lose their electrical service, so keeping the lights on is very important to the community. Cutting carbon and powering progress is kind of a non-negotiable. They believe environmental options are really well put towards the community, partly because of our track record of doing so well in it, and secondly is they don't want to give that up and continue in the right direction. The third one was smart investment. So basically that goes to rate impacts or possible costs to the Summerside Electric, that they wanted to make sure it was a smart investment given all the tools we had to use at our disposal. And you can see on the other ones there that they rank similar, but they taper off. So we decided to focus on the top 3 for our recommendations as staff. The energy versus capacity option, I'll hand it back over to Garrett. So this really goes into our options.
So we've reviewed the options as well, and I put these 2 charts on here because they parallel a lot of our own findings. These are reports from New Brunswick Power in 2022. They're exploring for their own needs the cost of energy power plants and the cost of capacity power plants. I've got them organized here, and you can see they're financially sorted from least to most expensive, and then I've flagged on them other key metrics of the community's green energy goals and security goals for the green leaves and the blue hands with the lock. You can clearly see on the energy side to the left, because it's cheap fuel, the sun and the wind is arguably free, you just got to collect it. Those resources are on the top for low cost energy. On the right hand side, the wind and the solar are now all of a sudden on the bottom because of the intermittency problem. There are some battery options in the middle. Those are grid charged batteries. Because we have constraints on the tie of what we can import from New Brunswick, we are limited in how much we can use grid batteries. So we would need to build generation to fill the batteries as well. If you click again there, a handful of these options, we've just had the little red no-go symbols on. These are for technologies that the fuel is not available to Prince Edward Island. There is no natural gas. There is no hydrogen supply on Prince Edward Island. We did explore trying to make our own hydrogen. It's very uneconomical at the scale we're trying to work within. And some of these technologies are still in the more experimental phase for things like tidal and wave power, and our geographic and tidal resources are limited.
One thing I'd like to add as well is that Dunsky did do a full in-depth fuel availability study for PEI as well. Staff also went out and talked to the local fuel infrastructure delivery companies like Ion Petroleum and those type of things to make sure what everybody's saying for PEI is where is the infrastructure on PEI for fuel? Where is the fuel supplies coming from? And Dunsky's report lined up quite well with the industry on PEI as well. So we did double check the facts. So these circles of the no-go circles, the red ones, are really from a combination of our own information and Dunsky's.
Yeah. No, it's fine. Another clicker. And just a reminder, so the decision that we need to make next as an electric utility and city is for capacity. So this chart on the right is what we're trying to make our decision on next. Next slide. So from the Dunsky report, and from our own reviews as well, there's 4 key areas of improvement that Dunsky is recommending Summerside Electric and the city pursue. We need to strengthen our tie to New Brunswick. That's with our partners at Maritime Electric in New Brunswick. We do need to continue our investments in the green energy portfolio, expanding wind in particular, Dunsky is recommending. And we do need to invest in some sort of fueled generation. If we implement this plan, so I've overlaid here on the right, that's the same forecast with these new additions to the system. Our import limit stretches out into the late 2030s, but there is still a constraint on the import limit we can get from New Brunswick. The additional benefit that we get though, as we've experienced in the past, when we experience breakages in the transmission system, either on island, undersea, in New Brunswick, having the assets local on our doorstep gives us more security of energy for our citizens. If we implement the plan that we're discussing here today, we'll be able to say in Summerside for the first time since the 1980s, we can have 100% backup power for the whole city. Our load has outpaced our local generation ability since the 1980s. For the rest of PEI at large, it's been a longer time since then. So we'll be a leader again in our utility infrastructure.
Just to talk to some timeline on that, Summerside Electric is severely restricted when we lose our broken chain there from Maritime Electric or New Brunswick. In the fact that we have limited assets to bring to bear for electricity security for our citizens that don't have any other forms of security. So with that, we need to make sure that we try to figure out a bunch of values. One is, like the public asked for, keep the lights on. Second was, can we do it with a lower carbon footprint? Third one is, can we actually do a smart investment here? So with those 3 criterias, we took a look at what was needed, and we went back in history, and we had generation capacity back in the 80s that covered 100% of the load in City Summerside with the installation of number 8, which was 1983. Since then, we've added a few things, about 5 megawatts to the plant, but it's not near enough to keep up. And we're about a third of our local backup generation today, if we lose that link to either Maritime Electric or New Brunswick, to support the citizens of Summerside and their electricity needs. So with this investment we're recommending, that takes it back to 98 to 100% of backup power in the community. So it solves a lot of issues for us on what the community expects. The key things being, can we do it with less carbon, and can we do it smartly with investment dollars?
To add to that as well, going back to the car and large truck analogy, the new engine technology that we've been reviewing is significantly more fuel efficient. So even though you're driving a gas car and a gas truck, it's like, this is about a 33% savings in fuel and gas emissions, even though it's the same fuel, just significantly less of it.
So for the liquid fuel unit, we're suggesting it's, at this point, approximately a $42.5 million investment for Summerside Electric. We call it liquid fuel because it's convertible to the available fuel on Prince Edward Island. And if we find some that are lower carbon emissions than they are today, available on PEI, we can modify the unit to that fuel, depending on the economic requirements at the time based on that fuel. But today, as far as fuel security goes, it has to be liquid fuel, and it has to be only what the infrastructure on PEI can provide to be secure. So some of these items you'll see is that a big purchase is the generator. We also have a grid connection electrically, and then we have the building to house the generator. And then we have a fuel system with a new SCR function, which are basically scrubbers for emissions to new standards for emissions for these type of engines. And then we also have interest during the construction period for that much money. So with those estimates in business, we were looking at a $42.5 million investment. The net present value that looked at lately has become $38.2 million. So what that means is when you spend the 42.5 million for this asset, over the life of its 35 years, we expect to be in pocket money, 38.2 million, in decision terms today. And we've thrown it through our finance committee, through our finance director to vet this for interest rates and sensitivity. We've used, staff believes, we've used a conservative estimate on the interest rates and certain things in the financial model that from what latest offerings have been given to the city. But things change over time as you amortize things, so we selected the higher number. The next point is that we'll not only break even against our other options of buying capacity in New Brunswick to get to our doorstep. It's highly more expensive than building it ourselves. We've found New Brunswick has also getting constricted in the next 3 to 4 years of capacity. They have a lot of issues on their system. And we see with the lack of supply of capacity and demand is high, that price escalates quite rapidly. So basically this slide is basically, we either pay New Brunswick at a higher cost or we pay ourselves and have at the same time local reliability and backup for the assets and technology that's available for PEI at the time. And we also then have control, direct control over it. We don't have anybody in between us that can change that arrangement with New Brunswick. So what's the feasibility? So the feasibility of the project that staff looked at was to place it at existing power plant at 99 Harbour Street where we have our existing operations. We have an existing smokestack, but it's old technology smokestack. So we have to use current technology for emissions. We still have to go through environmental review with the province. They have the burning fuel permit for that. The current engines, right now, if we were to burn the same amount of fuel that we believe we need to operate securely, with all the constraints, we'd be pushing out into the air 33% more CO2. So by upgrading into new technology of engines that are now, I guess, 20 to about 45 years newer in technology, their combustion cycles are so much more advanced that you'll use 33% less diesel fuel to create the same amount of energy. It's quite a change. So that, in our opinion, brings our CO2 emissions down overall for the times when we run engines as Summerside Electric. If we continue to use the old engines, we wouldn't change our carbon footprint. So that's important to note. The decision points on the investment for council to understand is basically a threefold process. One is we need council to make a decision on some start money to start understanding engineering feasibilities, layouts, construction costs for this size project, and basically wrap a feasibility project with an engineering estimate in detail. Back to you on whether or not we believe 42.5 million is correct, whether or not what the price points are and what the business case will look like with these new numbers. We took estimates, but we don't know until we get valid results and detailed designs. The other one is the pre-purchase long lead equipment. So once we decide on the unit and type and pricing and setup and options for that unit, then we would have to come back to council and we would say, okay, here's the hard numbers. What do you want to do? The third point is now we got to construct it, right? It's pretty hard. The two levels 1 and 2 will probably go hand in hand, but both points are decision points for council in the future. So what you see here on the graphs on the side is these black bars is our expected liter usage of diesel and the megawatt hour uses we need to make sure we're resilient and we're reliant to keep the lights on for the community, which means we're going to burn a lot more fuel to create megawatt hours for that. So we can invest in technology. It pays for itself. It lowers our CO2, we believe, and it also gives better backup reliability for the community, times of need. The timeline. Where are we at with the timeline? So this is a great circle diagram of a project where we get into data collection and opportunity assessment. Dunsky has helped us along with that as an outside professional firm to come in with recommendations. We checked in with council on where we were with that and accepted the report, engaged the community. And they also gave us project options through that process. We checked in council again here in 2025 in September, and then now we're into the project refinement phase, which then takes us to staff has to go and now say, we recommend this path. We need some money to make sure that what we believe is true, and then we come back to council, probably in 2026, with the refined project with harder numbers and everything else. But we need a decision. After that's done, the expectation is 2 to 3 years for a construction project, and really the time frame lapse is depending on what the environmental hurdles are with the province, and of course land zoning and all that other good stuff that happens with the city. So we're thinking a 3 to 4 year when we'll actually have it running, incorporated into operations, and we can rely on it 100%. So what are the decisions today in front of the committee is that we would like to get support of the committee to go to council with a recommendation to spend $400,000 of money to start that investigation and engineering feasibility, environmental studies, product selection, design, and what it looks like for the location, and to see if that's doable to go to the construction phase for council. And we'll inform council along all the way. And decision points will be done at that time based on those facts. And that's what we're here today to present on the need of the generator for the community, the business case need for the community, we believe, and then we need to start the ball on the construction project to make sure we can present to council good facts to make decisions on. Any questions?
Any questions from council? And just to, again, to confirm, we sort of said at the front end that then the full recommendation would come to the next council meeting with a resolution. So we're not asking for council to make a decision on spending $400,000 tonight. The presentation is tonight and the decision will be forthcoming. I see Councillor Doiron with light on and Councillor McColeman next after Councillor Doiron. And then Councillor MacDougall. You can turn your lights off if you want so they don't echo. Doiron, McColeman, MacDougall.
Very thorough and informative and cleared up a lot of questions that I had going into it, but just a couple that came up. You mentioned that this would sort of alleviate things until the late 2030s. What happens then? Like, is this just pushing the problem down to the late 2030s, and then we'll be trying to look for another source of generation?
Yep, Greg's got it back on screen. So in the multi-year plan, this is just one of multiple steps that Dunsky has identified. We need to invest in today, and then that gives us a window of opportunity for another 10 years. As assets like our old engines start to retire, we have discussions on replacing them with newer modern technologies or different technologies again as well. But at the utility cycle, we are in a continual cycle of investment to keep up with the growth. For a rough scale magnitude of the challenge that we are facing, we presented to the province here, to convert Prince Edward Island from heating oil to electric is roughly doubling the amount of energy that we need from electricity. So our power grid and these assets need to roughly double in the time frame that we're trying to convert all this heating oil.
If I may talk to it as well, you'll see there in the graph that this decision point basically takes us to 2030. And then we have another 5 years to discuss the next options. If that is invest in more battery, if that's invest in more solar and more wind as things get more advanced, that's a decision point then for either another type of dispatchable option like a battery or a generator, or can we make it through renewables? And what really dictates those decision points are exactly what Dunsky pointed out as well, which is, did the NB tie get strengthened with New Brunswick? If that's got strengthened, then maybe there's less of a risk to Summerside. So, but at the same time, if we can pay ourselves rather than pay someone else for the exact same asset, then we believe we're better off with the balance of the environmental and the smart investment discussions we had earlier. But everybody knows in the dead of winter without a generator, it gives an insurance policy for the operations of the city of Summerside. But for this will take us out to about 2030, and then we have to make another decision point between 2030 and 2035 of the next investment. This, as you can see there, with all the strengthening, this investment will take us out to 2035. But at 2035, you'll also notice that all the other engines are getting as old. So you'll see the black line of our assets that we have here in our old power plant start going away as well. Like that 1983 engine, which is 5 megawatts, and some other older ones that are smaller. So then that's the next decision point, but it'll get us there reliably, and we can pay for it without getting a rate shock to customers, in our opinion.
Okay. And then the only other, back on the slide that listed all the sources for generation on the left and capacity on the right, was natural gas ever a option or a consideration, or I'm sure it was, just maybe if you could explain where or why
We
it isn't
explored
there.
natural gas ourselves and with Dunsky. We even were exploring for a time blending natural gas with hydrogen that we could potentially make. The challenge with natural gas is that it's only available across the bridge. The feedback was for the size of engine that's needed, we would need about 24 trucks running continuously every day when we're doing a full run. So the volumes that we need to get across the bridge, which may or may not be open on high wind events and all these other scenarios, are a challenge to overcome economically. Yeah.
Councillor McColeman?
So I'm just wondering around the amount we had said, 400,000. Just thinking about it, say for example, at budget time, if we were looking at the information, are there any other areas that the city could look at? For example, are there projects that would be available? Sometimes with economic development, there's projects available where a third, like if the municipality provides a third, the province, the feds. And I'm just wondering if there's anything through Federation of Canadian Municipalities in their green fund or in anything where, say, we've had workshops and conferences on asset management. So if we have a very important asset to the municipality, I'm wondering, is there projects available that we could tap into for some of that 400,000?
Yes, staff did take a look pretty hard at what funding opportunities were for this size of investment. Unfortunately, the geography and infrastructure of PEI with its fuel delivery, a lot of the fuel positions on PEI are not anywhere near alignment with federal and provincial guidelines for creating and using energy. But to that effect, we are reducing carbon emissions for us when we burn liquid fuel. And the real question becomes then is, it's not an effective enough carbon reduction investment for those to align with those policies. We did take a look, but there is currently nothing available for this type of investment.
And part B to that question would be, I know that we're very dependent on the New Brunswick connection, but with something like this type of an asset, by increasing that infrastructure and modernizing and whatnot, would that, do you feel, in your opinions, strengthen Summerside's opportunity to have our own connection?
Own connection to New Brunswick, the answer to that is no. What it does do is it stops us on our market exposure for pricing of that capacity to buy it from New Brunswick, and it gives us more leverage. The whole idea of this project is to make sure that when we need it for Summerside, we have it, either in fuel, wind, solar, battery, or whatever we can use for levers to dispatch. But for this investment, we don't want to operate it. We don't want to use fuel in it. So we will try to do everything else as the last possible option. And what that means here is, if I go back a few slides, and I don't know how far, bear with me for a second. This slide here. So what we're trying to explain there is that the black is such a value against our purchases of just capacity, but we only run it 0.1% of the time. And that 0.1% of the time, we have a high carbon footprint. If we use newer technology to do the same thing and increase our black capacity, we save money from New Brunswick, and we actually will reduce our current carbon footprint a little. It moves the needle a little bit. It's not a big gouging movement like solar would be that we've invested in our wind, but it is the next step forward. And for Summerside and staff analysis, it's the only piece left that we can improve on with what we have on PEI and area for fuel.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks, guys, for dumbing that down for us. No, it really points to the problems that we're facing. I was in Ottawa last week at FCM meetings and just conversations off on the side and with different ministers. The conversation come up 2 or 3 times, the statement, I guess, the need for, they were talking about pipelines, they were talking about this, and a couple of conversations come up that we need a national energy grid from one end of this country to the other, and makes a lot of sense. But what my thought is, we have our wind farm now, right? And our wind farm is getting up there, and we need to probably replace those, but we also need to expand that. Is this going to, I imagine there'll be a case for those when the time comes, but this is not going to hold our hands any on the wind either, is it? Or
No.
capacity?
So as far as, so that gets back to the energy and capacity discussion.
Right.
So what will happen with this investment, the way we've done business for the last 25 years, is that capacity is, that black will go huge on this bar.
Right.
But that 0.1% will go up a little bit until we increase wind and solar,
Yeah.
and then it'll shrink back down.
Okay.
So for a short period of time, we'll still have all the capacity value. We'll get the security value for the energy until we, and then as we expand more wind and expand more solar and expand more battery assets, that little sliver for energy in black will get even smaller and smaller and smaller, but it won't devalue our assets on the open market for what capacity we have, if that makes any sense. So it goes back to,
Yeah.
we're gonna have a period of time until our new unit is constructed where in the next 3 to 5 years, we're gonna have probably a lot more use in that small 0.1%. Could go as high as 5%.
Right.
But then as things are strengthened, like the national electrical grid and our own investments in other technologies, we'll shrink that back down.
Right.
And our carbon footprint will hopefully go up again, or
There's-
go down again, sorry.
There's no opportunity of us wheeling, like if Nova Scotia comes up with assets there that can supply.
Absolutely. We always look in Atlantic Canada first
Right.
for doing business with low energy cost.
Yeah, what about Quebec or anything like that? Is there any opportunity for us to wheel power through?
Not at this time. Well, it could happen if we became, it's a lot more complicated to get energy from another district away from
Yeah.
us.
Because this issue is in Summerside now, but it's right across the country.
Yeah.
They're having the same conversations, right? So something has to give.
So the key thing for us is we need to create something that keeps us solid to keep the lights on. That was
Yeah.
number one with the community.
I agree with what you're doing here.
The second thing with the energy is we will get energy wherever it's the cheapest option for Summerside Electric to make sure we do a smart investment.
Right.
But it will not take, whatever energy we decide to buy will not devalue the capacity.
No.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any further questions from members of council? I just have one quick question. If council were to move ahead with this project, I certainly think this is a necessary project for our community. But if council were to move ahead, would this also create the opportunity to provide more energy to elsewhere in Prince Edward Island when they were struggling with disruption? So will this plant be able to support, as needed, or if requested, other communities, particularly in Western PEI, if, say, there was an interruption on the transmission and distribution service?
So as long as we can overcome our own load with our generation assets, and we've got a lot more tools available to us, and we're looking to expand upon that, we can expand our support beyond our borders, but we need to overcome our load is the main factor. So these plans in front of us here, they look at that one extreme day of the year for one extreme winter event. For outside that extreme, the other 99% of the time, we should be able to overcome our load and expand our support options outside of our own boundaries.
Answer is yes, depending on conditions, what's happening on the electric grid overall in PEI. However, the way capacity is done, we can resell capacity in areas when, for example, if Maritime Electric would have a generator unit down, they need to do maintenance, and for that 3-week, 4-week, month period, they need to find other capacity sources, and we have surplus, we'll sell it to them. We have no issue with that. The other thing, it can be used very much so for Summerside to be less of a burden to the Maritime Electric PEI grid. So it's not so much as can we supply to Maritime, it's we're allowing them more room to grow, if you look at it that way.
Great, thank you, Garrett and Greg. So I think the way this will work, I don't know if you two will, or we'll leave it to CAO and Finance to come back to our next council meeting with a specific recommendation, and that'll also lay out how that would be costed from the utility. Is that correct? Great. Okay. Awesome. Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah. Thank you.
With that, council, we'll move into our committee of the whole discussion items. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll start with Councillor Doiron on here, Greenwood Drive pedestrian safety. Councillor.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Your Worship. So yeah, I wanted to bring forward an issue that has been raised repeatedly by residents and probably councillors over the last few years, at least for myself. And I think it's one that's now sort of reaching a point where I don't think we can keep just acknowledging the concerns and moving on. So I'm asking council to consider looking seriously at possible pedestrian safety improvements on Greenwood Drive, specifically the stretch that's in Gavin Estates area north of Pope Road between Maplewood and Berkshire. Now I recognize that this is not a simple or inexpensive request. We have open ditches, narrow pavement, a longer stretch of road than in some of the other neighborhood requests that we receive. But I just want to remind us, including myself, that our own sort of stated direction was that when we ended sort of the traditional ditch infill program, that when it becomes a matter of safety, we committed to revisiting it. So I think that threshold has been met. We're not talking about convenience. We're talking about safety and access and dignity. I'll read a couple of emails that came in for the residents who just simply want to walk through their own neighborhood. So one, I have two things that were sent to me quite recently that sort of triggered putting this on the meeting tonight. One resident wrote, the amount of people that walk daily in our subdivision and the high amount of children along with the amount of traffic in here is really starting to become dangerous. I saw an older lady fall with her little dog and roll into the ditch while avoiding a vehicle as the grass was slippery. And we had one little guy fall into our ditch while he was with his parents. Another resident wrote, I have lived in major urban areas for 37 years. Greenwood Drive is the scariest street I've ever lived on. One winter, I had to dive into a snowbank to avoid a vehicle. As a 71-year-old, it was not an elegant move, but it saved me. Someone is going to get killed. That is not me being dramatic. It is reality, and all the neighbors agree. So that's just two examples where people are literally choosing between walking on the road or falling into a ditch. It's not hypothetical, it's happening. So I know we've often heard that residents should use Maplewood, since the sidewalk from Pope goes from Pope to Maplewood, and Maplewood is seemingly a less busy street. But the residents who live between Maplewood and Berkshire have only one option to get there, and that is to walk directly on Greenwood. There's no shoulder, there are ditches, car speed, and when we combine narrow pavement, on-street parking, and traffic, it becomes a safety environment that I don't think any one of us would accept in our own neighborhoods. So, to be clear, and the residents who have raised this issue have said the same thing. When it comes to the speeding, it isn't coming from strangers cutting through. It's the neighbors themselves. And lately, there's a new generation of younger drivers that are in the area. They've grown up and they've seen their parents drive fast, and they see it as the norm. So these aren't excuses, but they are real contributors to the problem, and they highlight why safe design matters. We can't control every driver's behavior, but we can control the environment that they drive in. So. Going forward, I don't know. I'm not suggesting that we commit millions of dollars today, but we need a plan, and I think a path forward that acknowledges that this problem exists, and exploring solutions. I don't know if that's ditch infilling with sidewalks, or partial shoulder widenings, or a walking lane. I don't know, or a gravel, asphalt. I don't know. There's yeah, it's an area of concern. There's potential funding tools. I don't know what the federal budget came out with today, but there's sources out there. I think there's the Active Transportation Fund. There's the Canada Community Building Fund, which sort of has a year by year. I think next year they're contributing almost $19 million for PEI. So there's things there. So anyway, I think this just comes down to fairness and safety. Other neighborhoods, they've benefited from ditch infilling, sidewalks, pedestrian infrastructure. The residents here, including seniors and children and families, I think deserve at least the same level of consideration that we look at it. Like I said, we've said it before, when safety becomes a factor, we're willing to revisit ditches. And safety is a factor here. So we've had falls, we've had near misses, we've had seniors falling into ditches with their dogs, and afraid to walk on their own street. So I'm just asking that we consider it. I know budget time is coming up. I know it's not a cheap, easy fix, but just I'm willing to hopefully figure something out through the next couple of years. I don't know. So anyway, that's that.
Thank you, Worship. I go in there every once in a while, Justin, and I know it is an issue, and especially when there's cars parked alongside of the road. So I'm trying to think, there's no shoulders either, right? There's no paved shoulder, it's just a drop
grass.
off, right? And then it's grass,
Yep.
okay. I'm
There's
just
some
thinking-
yards are filled in, obviously, from
exactly.
whatever, but it's sort of, that you can
yeah.
go so far on one side and then so far on the other side.
Right. I was just thinking like how the province has done, they've widened the shoulders on the Route 6 to Cavendish and the Blue Shank Road, like something like that, making the shoulder even wider would be a safer alternative.
Yeah, at
It,
this
like-
point, anything.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly,
yeah,
like if
it's-
we're looking for something that's safer, and I know it's not about the money when it comes to safety, but if we're,
Yeah.
looking for something that we could maybe do relatively cost-effective and quickly for the residents, that might be something.
And it's been one of those things where we get people contacting us saying it's not safe, but when you have these real instances of people dodging vehicles and falling and slipping when the grass is wet, ripping their dog with the leash, and kids falling down with their parents. Like, they're real things that are happening, not just might happens.
How come MacDougall got a sidewalk and not Greenwood?
It was on the list of.
It was just the priority list?
The ditch list, just based on the depths that were there and where
Okay.
where it sort of fell with
It was
existing
based on
networks.
when they were
And there was
filling
no
the
ditches
ditches.
and, yeah.
And it's used a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
And in there, I do get residents that ask why MacDougall, like they're from that area, but it's just, it had nothing to do with the name or a push by any of us, certainly not me, but it was on the list and, yeah. Yeah, even residents on MacDougall were like, okay, but yeah, it was on the list to be done, so.
Yeah, just briefly, I would certainly, Councillor Doiron, I'd certainly look at wanting to support the idea of someone falling in a ditch and more than one person trying to figure out how to make it safer. So, no, I certainly look at how to do that because it is real people, and if it's just infrastructure, I say just, but if that's what it takes, it's not somebody creating crime, it's the infrastructure, it's our infrastructure. So if we can work and improve our infrastructure, then that would improve people's lives. So I think that's important to keep in mind. So thank you for bringing it to our attention.
Thank you very much. And just, when we were discussing no shoulder, winter is a whole other beast because the snow is right there and there's nowhere to go. There was somebody else that dove into a snowbank, I think she said 2 winters ago, but still it happened. And she thanked us for the last winter because the snow plow or blower started making a little bit of a shoulder. I don't know if that was by chance or just if someone directed them to do that, but she was thankful for the last winter that happened. So it at least gave a bit more of a path to walk in the winter.
Yeah, I think that's a prime example of what we had spoke about when we had changed the ditch infilling policy about areas like that. Anyway, it is a real concern, and it has been a major concern when there was development tried to be done out there. That was the first thing that was brought up. So anything, I think we need to take a look at it, and I support having a look at it.
Do we know if the width of Greenwood along that stretch is is that a standard width of all city streets, or is it more narrow? Do we know?
No, I think it's a standard width.
Okay. Because to your point, what's that? Yeah, well, to your point, we recently had discussions about development in that area, and that was something that was brought up regularly about, the lack of infrastructure to support growth in that area. And I think one of my comments surrounded around when we look at these types of projects, it's not to say no to them because of the lack of infrastructure, but to try to find ways to improve the infrastructure. And I think this is a valuable example of that, trying to find a way to improve the infrastructure in that area so residents can safely move around, especially heading out to existing infrastructure that we just spent a lot of money on, the active transportation along Hope Road. So it makes a lot of sense. It's just to find ways to financially do it and what's the best way to proceed, because there's a large number of residents up in that area, and the quicker or the easier you can get them out to Hope Road and surrounding areas makes sense. So yeah, I support the idea of figuring out a way forward. It's just getting that, however that works.
Yeah, just quickly, maybe we can ask Tech Services or CAO to have a look at it, see if we can come back with, to at least explore it, to see if there's any ways of doing it, and anyway.
Even if it's part of the budget.
Yeah.
It's not I don't mean to go outside of budget and make this extra, but yeah.
Exactly.
I just wonder, the comments were made that possibly technical services could bring us back some information on it. I'm also wondering, because I am visual, I'd like to get a picture of of the actual area where people are walking and in the, like I'm picturing Greenwood Drive, like there's a lot, like with the path, the active transportation path, and all along there, but beyond there, on the other side. So I think that would be really helpful for some of us to really see the exact area that you're speaking of, to visualize it.
Right, so it sounds like there's a majority, at least to council, looking for staff to take this away, look at some options for that stretch, to come back with what those options would be, budgeted options ideally, or at least rough estimates as we're heading into budget season, whether that's widening or a sidewalk or otherwise. Clear, good, great. Thank you, Councillor. With that, we move on to item B, Confederation Trail Gates update. Councillor Trenholm.
Sure, yes, I just asking for an update, and as I think it was here in a 3 months ago, just to talk about the Confederation Gate trails, having them widened or removed just based on safety issues and that kind of thing. And as this appeared in the agenda package, an individual, Dr. Richard Wedge, read it, and he submitted a letter that he wanted to bring to, it's addressed to myself and CC'd Councillor Morrison, and so he would like that to bring to council, so I just asked that that be put into the minutes as well. Just highlighting support for removing the trails, the gates, not the trails. Trails good, gates bad. In the letter he mentions, I'll just quote him here, "A lady is using the trail off McColeman Road, whom I see often carefully driving her scooter around the end post at a 30-degree angle next to the ditch, because she can't get through the gate easily. This kinds of access barriers are necessary in 2025, and as we probably are all familiar, the Tri-Saw program, and I'll do, transparency. I was had a role in bringing the Tri-Saws to the city. There are 2 manners and the community connections. That program itself can't even access the Confederation Trail because the gate's there. So, so I'm just curious if staff had any luck in determining with the province about that status.
So I can update you on that. Turn that on. I had a meeting on September 29th with a Doug Wiseman, who's been hired by the province to do a risk management plan for the trail. Gave him our concerns and our wants and needs. Spoke to him again just last week. The early draft has been sent to the province on his findings. There's no real update on anything further than that until the province reviews their findings and get back to us how they're going to go forward. That's what I got for you on that one. His initial thought was probably not going to take them out, but they will look at maybe widening the gates to meet the new criteria. They are there for a safety concern of allowing traffic to get into the highways. They're not on every gate, they're not on every roadway, but they put them on their higher traffic areas.
I guess for me, I know that there's 16 intersections where the gates cross the city, and there's no gates there. They were either removed or never were there. So I guess for me, I'm really struggling to find out what's the rationale that if there's 16 that already aren't there, and I don't hear any reported incidents of, I don't know, people running out or cycling out or mobility scooters coming out and not stopping for traffic. It's anybody who's using that would view it as an intersection. Any intersection that, if you have the right of way, you can pass, a vehicle stop. So I really am struggling with, I can see the issue and accessibility. So I'm just struggling with that. So I guess to determine what happens with the province, if the province decides that nothing's going to change, then maybe that comes back to council. We figure out what we can do, because
that would have to be a council decision. Yes.
Yeah, because I know in the letter that Dr. Wedge mentions, he mentions that in certain areas of Charlottetown, council just voted, and there's no gates there. So, but anyway, it seems to be such an easy. It seems to be such an easy way for our city to become more accessible, more inclusive. It's definitely a pain in my heart, because when you see people getting injured, and I see it almost once a week, I see it. It's hard to me to make a rational sense out of that. It's like any other intersection. If we treated that intersection the same as we treat a four-way stop, we're going to have gates there. If you look at the accessibility standards across Canada and even the Trans-Canada Trail, it talks about barriers, and those zigzag gates, they're not recommended, but that's what's there. You got to zigzag to get past. So I guess I'd be curious to find out what the end result is of the study, I guess, the assessment.
Yeah, once I get that back from him, I'll come back and update you on his findings.
Yeah. All right. All right. Well, I appreciate that. Thanks.
Rob, a quick question there. Is it Department of Transportation undertaking the study? Who's the
Yes,
the
that is
lead on the
correct. They
study?
hired this consultant. He's from Ontario. That's been hired by Department of Transportation to do a risk management plan for the trail.
Is there any further questions, comments, statements from members of council? Okay. Thank you, Councillor Trenholm, and Mr. Rankin, I guess? I don't know, director, acting director, I'm not sure. I don't know I don't read all the email tags these days. All right, we're gonna move on to community benches update, also Councillor Trenholm, and Robbie, I think you're probably still up. Over to you,
Yes,
Councillor.
so I got your recommendation, or your questions. The pilot project went well last winter. We had 4 benches located throughout places you had requested. We can certainly add the 2 that you're looking for this winter. I spoke with Director Greg before he left on snow removal. Yeah, so we can certainly add those 2 on if that's the direction you want to take. Yeah, the Rotary Park ones, they don't come out of the park, so they stay there all winter. So I didn't add that one in.
No. And that's perfect, yeah. And again, just resident concerns. Yeah, no, for me, that's great if we can expand it and being able to determine what's the benefit, I guess, what's the costs. It worked well year 1, so hopefully year 2 it works well as well.
Yeah, I mean, adding these 2 is not going to add a whole lot of cost. If we do all 35 benches that are in the city, then you're looking at a budget item.
Yeah, so then I guess after this year, then we'll figure out.
We can certainly look at going further, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's great. No, thank you.
Wait, any further questions, comments from council? Seeing and hearing none, thank you, Councillor.
And sorry, I
yeah,
just
yep.
too want to say, like, I've heard from individuals and they're extremely pleased and happy. It makes the world a difference. I know I've used the example a few times, but when a partner's spouse is getting ill and they can't walk a full lap around their house and they use the benches all summer, then when it's taken away at the winter, it affects like their health, their well-being, the sense of who they are, right, in the whole relationship. So whenever they're out there, it really does make a world of difference. And of course, I tend to see it now. It's highlighted every time I see someone using the benches as a rest spot or a socialization. So anyway, it's nice to hear, and thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Evergreen Village, Councillor MacDougall. Councillor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't think I have to talk too much on Evergreen Village with council here. We're all well aware of the situation, and we've been. I want to thank all the council for their support for Evergreen Village. I recently, as recently as Saturday, was asked to go to a meeting with Minister Deagle, Minister Ramsey, and myself. Met with the residents of the park, and it was a good meeting, and hopefully there's something going to come out of it. But we all received a copy of the letter, I believe, from Risha, that they were looking for a little bit of assistance. So I received that email, and we're going to forward that on to the Finance Committee. So it'll come back for a review and recommendation, if that's okay with council. Yeah. But hopefully something gives here, because it's terrible when you have 57 families and a lot of them are not sleeping, so it's wrong and needs to be fixed. Thanks.
Great, just judging by the nodding heads, council's comfortable with sending that to Finance Committee, and you're the chair of Finance Committee, Councillor MacDougall, so keep it on your list. Thank you very, very much. Thank you, Councillor. Move on to our last committee of the whole discussion item from council, Councillor Cameron, with respect to building inspections. Councillor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess mine is a bit twofold. I've been trying really hard to think of how to word this so it's not confusing. Mostly looking at building inspections for pre-existing buildings once they've reached a certain age. I have heard over the last 2.5 years from numerous residents who live on Jennifer Street about buildings that they live in that are potentially, because I have not been into the building in 2.5 years, nor do I know what a safe building would look like, that is potentially unsafe structurally for them to be living in. And I'm wondering from staff's perspective, or if we have in the past ever done inspections of buildings that are in the municipality after they've been built. I know that there's a whole process when they are being built, but let's say 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, do we ever check on the safety and structural integrity of those buildings to make sure that they are still safe and habitable? I know we do have building inspector within the city. I don't know if that falls within part of that person's job description or not. I don't know if that's something that we can do. I don't know if it's something that we would do, but I do want to bring it up because these are buildings that are built within our municipality that we have approved to be built and let people live in. We may not own those buildings, but we still owe our residents a certain level of safety, like we just discussed. Second part of that, I'm just going to ramble through the whole thing, goes back to older buildings. Last week, there was a woman who lives around the corner from me, and I have spoken with her to use her as an example of this. During a medical emergency, when EMS arrived, there was no way to get into her building. There was locked door at the front and back, no way for them to get in, no buzzer, no key for EMS to get in for her. And I'm just wondering, and like not to point fingers, I don't think that is the landlord's issue. I think that it's perhaps a building that was constructed a certain way a long time ago that we should maybe try to encourage or think of ways that are a little bit outside the box so that there are ways that all emergency services can access anyone who is in an emergency, whether that's fire, police, or EMS. I know that realtors can access any building that they're selling with a little box where the key is kept and only they have the code. So there are ways to make sure that people are safe, and I want to just see if we can explore the options of how we can make sure that in emergencies and in everyday living situations that people are safe. I hope that made sense.
That makes a lot of sense. So part one of these questions, I guess, for staff. So I'll ask CAO to speak to the first one, which was respect to, I can summarize it. Councillor Cameron would be looking as to whether or not we do, or whether we should, or whether we could conduct spot inspections by our building inspector on properties throughout the city. That short? Okay.
Yeah, so I would suggest from the outset of the issuance of a building permit, designs are presented to our building inspector for a fairly rigorous review, and they're balanced against the National Building Code. So those are reviewed from a construction perspective, and they include most, if not all, of the structural requirements that would be deemed to be safe. And then from there, our inspector does do spot checks on buildings that are under construction. Obviously, in an attempt to do so, to see the structure and how it's being constructed and to see the materials being used, it's best to do so while it's under construction before, obviously, all the structural elements are covered by drywall and other elements. So we do those as well, and I think if you talk to any builder in town, they're aware that our building inspector's actively out as much as possible checking on the construction. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's essentially the process we follow.
No, it doesn't. I'm talking about buildings that are already built. I have no question that our building inspector is doing a fantastic job with the buildings that are being built. I'm wondering if when a building is built, years down the road, do we look at them ever again?
No.
Okay. Is it something that we should be thinking about looking at? I know that not all structural things are always visible once a building is built, but if someone has come to myself or another councillor and has stated that the structural things that they can see, the integrity of those are no longer sustainable, should we as a municipality be looking at that to then contact a landlord or IRAC or whomever and say, your building is not up to code anymore, we have inspected it and it should be brought up to code?
I don't know, that's a question for me to answer. I think that's more of a council discussion. I mean, at this point, our practice and process is that if a building is constructed to the National Building Code, 20 years down the road, it certainly shouldn't be showing signs of lack of integrity in terms of its structure. If it's built properly, those standards are there so that the structural integrity of the building is there 20 years down the road.
Yeah, and we also sit here and talk about buildings that are dilapidated in the city, that are unsightly properties or uninhabitable properties that we as a municipality have to tear down and pay for because they are not fitting within a bylaw that we enforce. And I think that an issue that could potentially be prevented is if we look at buildings when they are brought to us to say that they are no longer safe or the integrity doesn't seem safe. And I'm not directing that directly at you, I'm directing at council if you think that that is more of a question for council. And I want to put it out there for consideration that we could perhaps be looking at ways to make sure that buildings are staying safe for our residents.
So I could just jump in on that one. If there's a bit of maybe a difference in distinction of a building that's not been properly maintained over years, not necessarily been built incorrectly.
Right.
And allowed to decay, and then we're dealing with, as you say, challenging buildings that we have to demolish throughout the city. So there's a bit of a distinction between whether it was built incorrectly or improperly maintained.
Correct, and there are certainly people in this city who own buildings that are not properly maintained.
Okay, so there is a bit of a distinction there. If a tenant does, Kristen just reminded me, if a tenant of a building does have concerns about the structural or safety, structural integrity or safety within a building, they can certainly call our building inspector, and our fire marshal will attend the property and do an assessment and provide written recommendations to the landowner and the property owner to bring them up to speed. I don't know what kind of authorities we have to make them do so, but we can follow up on that. There's orders, whether or not they have a lot of teeth, because we're dealing with our bylaw as we speak, but there is that process that they can follow.
Councillor Kember, you okay if we open it to the floor,
Yeah,
council
absolutely,
first as well? Because I know there's a couple. Councillor MacDougall, you wanted to speak.
Yeah, so
and
I think
Councillor Snow.
JP just answered what I was going to say, because I had a resident or a dwelling a couple of years ago that the neighbors were very concerned about the property, and we could not enter it to do an inspection unless the resident asked us to come in. And so that couldn't be done. But I was going to say, just in this case, if the tenant has an issue, I'm sure that we could do something there. So thanks.
Okay, thank you. I'm actually glad that you brought that up, Councillor Cameron. I think, and I won't speak for everybody else, but I know I do hear from people that are in buildings within the ward that I represent, and sometimes there are issues. A lot of times if they can't reach the landlord, or the landlord is absent from the province and it goes into a main account for the rent or whatever, that is a concern, and I think it automatically falls on to people looking at the municipality as being responsible. And sometimes we're not. Again, I also think of larger homes that have been turned into housing apartments or one-bedroom apartments or whatnot. And again, I know I sound maybe like a broken record, but I'm thinking of the one on Belmont Street. That was one that was very problematic, and the fire marshal and the complaints and the garbage and all of that. And I continually will say, the neighbors lost a home because of it, and another neighbor their home was destroyed and they lost vehicles. So I do think that as a municipality, we do have to be responsible in looking at those things and not and I'm not saying that we give lip service, but that might be an area where if it really needs to be tightened up, it needs to be tightened up, because sometimes we're caught in the middle. And I think people see that. Like now I'm dealing with a few things in my ward where people are very concerned about the garbage piling up, but there is a no pickup order on it with the landlord. So again, that becomes problematic for the municipality. And then when you have things happening that are unfolding and the bylaw enforcement officer can't do anything other than within the framework that they can work, I think that's the kinds of things that we really need to tighten up. If we can, not react to the problem, but the fact of the matter is, if it's within our jurisdiction to respond in some way, I think that means a lot more to people than if we just say, well, it's not really our problem. You'll have to go through the landlord that owns it. Thanks.
Further thoughts or discussion from members of council? I see some thinking, but Councillor Snow?
I was going to say this, but Councillor Cameron indicated earlier, and I think he was like, I don't want to point fingers, I think was his exact words, and I think he was trying to not signal out maybe some landlords, which is fair, I understand that. But I was in that business for many years, took care of many properties, and currently doing something very similar, and I think landlords have that responsibility to make sure that their doors, or the residents living in their units, they are maintained, that there is a doorbell, that the door unlocks when they're in an emergency. So, and although I don't think it's maybe on the books our responsibility, but it's definitely our responsibility to advocate for our residents, and I think over the years, I think we have missed the mark on doing that. And I don't know what the answer is, but I think we really do need to figure it out, because I know there's a number of properties in my ward that over the years deteriorated and people have had to live in, that probably very unfortunate. And I think it's probably throughout many wards and other municipalities. And I think maybe because we haven't done it in the past, we're still not doing it, but I think it's a very worthwhile cause to look at, and how we can address it, and through some of the bylaws reviews and stuff, I think we can possibly do that. But I would hope we'd really give this a really good look, because it is a dangerous situation. And I mean, I seen the video you're referencing, seen some of the information on it, and it is concerning to think that, you know, somebody could have called an ambulance and them not be able to access that door and have to do whatever to try to get into a building if somebody's in distress. I can't even think of that. So as a landlord, I don't think we should soften it. I think we should have an expectation of anybody that's a property owner, especially those renting to residents in our city, that they maintain their properties, keep them safe, and keep them up to a certain standard that every person would expect when they're renting a property. I know it's something that's been brought up to me over the years, and it often, I think, sometimes when we push it towards, sometimes when we push it towards the province or whoever, it seems to be sort of pushed back or pushed off to the side, and it's frustrating, especially for the residents that are either living in it or living beside it. And I just, yeah, hopefully we really take a good look at this and try to do more.
Councillor Trenholm?
Yeah, I guess this is not something I want to be silent on, I guess. I think I agree with what we're all saying, that I think in terms of exploring what we can do, finding out what we, I guess, legally can do, and if it's creating a bylaw or making an amendment to a bylaw or something like that, for sure. In regards to the other point of not having access in case of emergency, that's been identified by a number of individuals during my recent seed work, has been a concern. So I would certainly support understanding what the process is, and if it is the landlord's responsibility, how do we define that? And if it's not being done, what can we do as a municipality to help? Because that's very important, and I think it's a really important subject that you brought up, Councillor Cameron, today, so thank you so much.
Councillor Cameron, do you have another
Yeah,
comment
I
there
just-
as well?
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Quick thing.
Sure.
I think that, like Councillor, or Deputy Mayor Snow has said, that perhaps this has been going on for a while and maybe got pushed down at some point. I think at this point it's time to be proactive and make sure that we're thinking ahead and not waiting for issues like these to continuously come forward. I think the fact that there's been, one person in the last couple of weeks who has had an emergency and hasn't been able to be seen because EMS has been locked out of their building, I think that is enough to say that we should be looking forward instead of just waiting for more and more. So I'm glad that everyone seems to be relatively on board for that. And I would also be curious if we could speak to emergency services to see if they have had any issues getting into buildings during emergencies, or if they have any suggestions on how to move forward if there is an emergency at a building that they can't access. I would assume that if Island EMS is having issues, then fire and police might also have issues.
We have tools to get in.
To every building? Like to just knock down the door? Okay.
If you needed to.
Okay, just-
I-
Sorry, Councillor Adams, yeah.
Didn't Chief Ron indicate one time that a lot of landlords leave him the information, or leave the fire department the information on how to get into the building in case of an emergency, other than the obvious way if there's an emergency, but, yeah. Yeah.
We have on our truck a ring of keys that landlords that want to have
Or
us to have that
proactive,
access.
yeah.
Yeah, but
Okay, listen, it sounds like, again, there's general interest from council to explore this further on both of the points. One, let's put this out to council, one potential option would be under the work that's underway at Chair McColeman's committee, reviewing the unsightly premises bylaw, the vacant premises bylaw, there could be an opportunity there to consider or explore periodic fire and safety inspections for buildings under one of those bylaws. The municipality is given powers, you as council are given powers from the province to issue bylaws, resolutions and policies with respect to health and safety in the municipality, so it's certainly within your jurisdiction to consider. And there is work already underway in that scope, so I wonder if that would be the right place to fit it while that work is underway, or look at it as a standalone. I'll sort of park that for a second and then come back to you, Councillor Cameron, as the councillor brought this forward. And then I'll just speak briefly to the second one. It would be sounds like there is an interest again from council to get feedback from staff, also to liaise with EMS, but also fire department on access to all buildings, not just ones where people have been provided with keys. Lots of people travel to lots of places. Many cities around the world require lock boxes for any multi-unit apartment to be outside of those buildings, and fire services uses those. So somewhere like New York's always a good example, but they're everywhere. That those aren't because all of those are for sale. With realtors, that's because fire services there needs to be able to access those buildings. So maybe helpful to hear from fire services on whether that would be valuable and helpful from a health and safety side. And Councillor McColeman's Bylaw and Governance Committee to take the fire and safety inspection item and look at if that could be integrated into the existing bylaw review work. Is that sufficient, or do you want?
No, I think if work is already being done and it can fit nicely into that, I think that why would we go a different route? If it can't fit in that, then I think we should go a different route, but I think that COJP Dorsey had his light on for a while, so.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I thought you had something to say and it's been on for a bit, so.
I'll just say that, yeah, that's certainly something we can include in the bylaw work, or at least look at what our potential options are. I guess I was the only one in the room who misunderstood what you were asking in terms of inspections. I was assuming you were talking about the building inspection going back 20 years later to make sure the building was built to code in the first place.
No.
So that's why
That's
total
why I said
gap there.
I have no question that our current building inspector is doing his job properly when the buildings are being built. I don't think that he should have to go back and make sure that it is built to the code that it was built to whenever. It's the deterioration over time that perhaps it's not up to any code anymore.
Yeah, so that's why I just wanted to reiterate that
Yep.
my answer to no was actually yes, and that our building inspector does go and inspect buildings, works with the fire marshal's office, issues orders. Aaron's gonna clarify whether it gets handed off to IRAC for the next steps. And I know there's some challenges with some tenants who, want a level of anonymity because they're fearful of reporting these issues and with the vacancy rate being what it is. So I think there's a lot of that consideration in place. But on our radar and to the mayor's point, and with Chair Norma's support, we'll include that work to whatever degree we can in our ongoing bylaw work.
And you,
Yes, Councillor McColeman, as long as you're agreeable with that, I suppose we threw something at you.
Yes. But I was just looking at the information in the update tonight. The next set of priorities are to be looking at vacant premises, unsightly premises, and enforcement bylaws. But I mean, not speaking for the staff on that aspect, but we might be able to just bring up some of this discussion so that they are aware that these were some of the points brought up to council, and that might factor into what they're looking at in their research and review.
Great, thank you, Councillor, thank you, Council. That's exactly how this is supposed to work. So, thank you for everybody's input. We'll now move on to item 7, CAO updates. I don't see any under there, CAO DeRosier, so we can skip over that one, and we will then adjourn here our Committee of the Whole meeting of November 4th, 2025. Council, does Council want to take 5 minutes, or do you want to move right into the special council meeting, which should be, I think, relatively quick? 5 minutes? Okay, we'll take 6 minutes, so we'll resume again at 7:30. We'll do our special council meeting. Thanks, everybody.
I sit by the window with photo in hand. It's the sound of your voice. It's calling me back. So I close my eyes. I hear sweet singing birds. Then your hands in mine. Once again, once more. Keep with me the rhythm, the reason and the rhyme. Oh, keep with me, my love, for the rest of time. Keep with me the rhythm, the reason and the rhyme. Oh, keep with me, my love, for the rest of time. I sit by the window with photo in hand. It's the sound of your voice. You're calling me back.
is a blowing sun, and the flames reaching high to the sky. It was there for the knowing sun, but the fever was clear in his eyes. He told of a Wallace son, taken over by hellish blue death. It's a wonder he made it here, but the stables, they suited him best. Oh, and his body's aching, oh, and my heart is breaking, oh, not even God could save him, oh. But can you give me a minute? I need a place to lay. I've been swimming from the wall this so many a mile away, and I know I was in it, I know that I'm no well. If you give me a minute, certain stories I could tell. On a journey of 42 days. The fever came early on, and the captain, he couldn't be saved. They were turned away in Georgetown as the word of the trouble had spread. By the time they had run aground, most of the shipmates were dead. Body's aching, oh, and my heart is breaking, oh, not even God could save her. Can you give me a minute? I need a place to lay. I've been swimming from the wall this so many a mile away, and I know I was in it, I know that I'm no well. If you give me a minute, certain stories I could tell. Gulf of St. Lawrence sun, the shore makes an icy cold grave. But Wallace is in its sun, and the people whose passage she gave. He cheated the water, son, but the fever has sure taken hold. The smoke is a blowing sun, a prayer we should say for his soul. Can you give me a minute? I need a place to lay. I've been swimming from the wall that's so many a mile away, and I know I was in it, sir, I know that I'm no well. If you give me a minute, sir, the stories I could tell. The stories I could tell. Oh, the stories I could tell. Stories I could tell. Oh, the stories I could tell. Stories I could tell. Stories I could tell. Stories I could tell.
I left my home on an autumn day, turned my face to the ocean gray, shed my life for a chance to be free, hang on to hope on a treacherous sea.
To look back again on the land of mine, to have my heart and my mind beguiled, mistake. Day by day, another Yankee away.
O'er the seas we go, say fare thee well, so long to the world we know. Oh, the hell we'll raise when fortune guides us over furious waves. When fortune guides us over furious waves.
They say hope is a fickle thing, but I'd rather hope than face another frozen spring. I'd rather brave the ocean's rage and safely starve another day.
Devil you know, or the devil you don't. A hangman's smile or a pastor's doubt. For hope is a thing we can't afford. I won't leave my luck in the hands of the Lord.
O'er the seas we'll go, say fare thee well, so long to the world we know. Oh, the hell we'll raise when fortune guides us over furious waves. When fortune guides us over furious waves.
All I'm bringing along with me, tiny branch of my family tree. All we've lost and all we've known, we'll plant anew and watch it grow. The seas we go, say fare thee well.
All right, great. Welcome back, everyone. So we'll proceed with our evening agenda here. I'll now call to order the special council meeting in the city of Summerside of November 4th, 2025. I'd ask for a mover and a seconder to move and second the agenda. Councillor MacDougall, Councillor Trenholm, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, we'll proceed with the agenda as presented. Opportunity for any member of council to declare a conflict of interest with respect to any item before you tonight. Seeing and hearing none, we'll move to item 4, Resolution COS 25-112, Prestige Avenue. I'll hand it over to you, Councillor Doiron, as Chair of Planning Board.
Okay, thank you once again, Your Worship. Resolution COS 25-112. Whereas the City of Summerside is a designated municipality under the Emergency 911 Act, and whereas, as a designated municipality is responsible to name a street, public or private, where the street serves 3 or more properties, and whereas the developer, Strategic Holdings, Inc., Nathan Kember, of the private street, wishes to submit the street name Prestige in honor of the family business located in the vicinity. The Kember family own and operate a number of businesses as well as housing developments in the city. And whereas, as required by Schedule B, street naming policy of the City Subdivision and Site Development Bylaw SS-19, Council shall approve or deny the recommendation or request by simple resolution based on 1, the recommendation of the Street Naming Committee, 2, the conformance of the proposed name with this policy, and 3, any other considerations that Council considers relevant. Be it resolved that Council approve the following street name submitted by the developer. As per the street name policy, the suffix will be Avenue. The official street name is Prestige Avenue. The private street is located off Kember Street, which is currently under construction. This bears the recommendation of the Planning Board meeting of October 20th, 2025. No, November the 4th, 2025. That's today. We just did that. Moved by myself, and I would ask for a seconder from any member of council. Deputy Mayor Snow.
Thank you, Councillor Duran. Resolution COS 25-112, moved by Councillor Duran, seconded by Councillor Snow, and as amended to note the date of November 4th, 2025, and striking October 20th, 2025 is on the floor. Any further comments, questions, statements from members of council? Seeing, Councillor Adams, yes.
A quick question. Just sort of a follow-up to, okay, so we're naming that, we're going Prestige, yeah, you know where I'm going with this. Why did we name that Kember Street and not a Water Street East extension?
Councillor Adams, you're looking at me like I would know the
No,
answer.
I was wondering, like.
I'm wondering, that's a good
I know,
question.
because I don't know who you want to answer that.
Sure.
I'm thinking, like, we've just gone through this with the whole corridor and the naming and how one street should continue on. So this did not meet that criteria, so I'm just curious as to why.
Yeah, the question.
Because this was a multi-part, this wasn't just one person putting the money into this road, this was like a multi-part partnership, so.
Is Kember Street private? No. It's an extension, so we do the snow removal and, or the province does and all that.
It's a city street.
City street.
So it's just something to think about when we're saying that we should keep going with them, but just a couple months ago, we didn't see an issue with cutting a road off at the intersection.
This was just for the Prestige, wasn't it?
Yes, but I'm saying like, this is for Prestige, but it's coming off Kember, so I'm questioning how that even got to be Kember when it should be Water Street East, because it's at the,
Did the Kember come through?
You want to put on your,
yeah, it did. It did come through here. It did come through here, and I know I voted no on it, but,
Oh, yes,
I'm just pointing out that we've done it very, very recently, so,
duly noted.
yeah.
yes, duly noted for the next discussion on street naming. And sorry, I didn't know, because I must have not been here. I must have been away at that meeting, because I don't remember this at all. But maybe I just didn't pay attention. I have no idea. Was I here?
No, I mean, no.
Because when I saw the package too, I
It's
was
just
wondering, I
something-
was like, oh,
yeah.
when did that get?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just something to add to the
Yep.
list, because I know we have a few others.
Yep, note of Councillor Adams, yeah, I think that is noted there. Thank you, Councillor. Further comments, questions, statements from members of council? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The resolution is carried. With that, we'll move on to item 5, Resolution COS 25-113. I'll hand that over as well to Chair of Planning Board, Councillor Duran, for the next 1, 2, 3 resolutions. Councillor.
COS 25-113. Whereas the City of Summerside has received funds through the Housing Accelerator Fund program, which have been delegated to incentivize the redevelopment of existing properties, and whereas pursuant to the Municipal Government Act and amendments thereto, a municipality has the authority to establish a grant bylaw for the purpose of issuing grants and for establishing qualifying criteria that applicants must meet in order to obtain those grants. And whereas the Housing Accelerator Fund Incentive Bylaw, Bylaw CS 2502, was read and formally approved a first time at the council meeting held on October 20th, 2025. That's still correct. Therefore, be it resolved that the Housing Accelerator Fund, HAF, Incentive Bylaw be hereby declared as read a second time. Moved by myself, and I would ask for a seconder from council. Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Councillor Duran. Resolution COS 25-113 is on the floor. Moved by Councillor Duran, seconded by Councillor Cameron. Further comments, questions, statements from members of council? Seeing, hearing none, we'll call for a vote. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Can the ayes just raise their hands, or 1, 2, 3, 4 ayes? All opposed? 1, 2, 3 nays. 4 to 3, the ayes have it. The resolution is carried. Councillor Duran.
COS 25-114. Whereas the City of Summerside has received funds through the Housing Accelerator Fund program, which have been delegated to incentivize the redevelopment of existing properties. And whereas pursuant to the Municipal Government Act and amendments thereto, a municipality has the authority to establish a grant bylaw for the purpose of issuing grants and for establishing qualifying criteria that applicants must meet in order to obtain those grants. And whereas the Housing Accelerator Fund Incentive Bylaw, Bylaw CS 2502, was read and formally approved a first time at the council meeting held on the 20th day of October 2025. And whereas the Housing Accelerator Fund Incentive Bylaw, Bylaw CS 2502, was read a second time at this council meeting held on the 4th day of November 2025. Therefore, be it resolved that the second reading of the Housing Accelerator Fund HAF Incentive Bylaw, Bylaw CS 2502, be hereby approved. I would invite a member of council to move that. Deputy Mayor Snow, and a seconder, Councillor Trenholm.
Thank you, Councillor. Resolution COS 25-114, moved by Deputy Mayor Snow, seconded by Councillor Trenholm, is on the floor. Further comments, questions, statements from members of council? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Again, I'll ask for the hands up on the ayes. 1, 2, 3, 4. Opposed? And 3 nays. The ayes have it by 4 to 3. The resolution is carried. Councillor Doiron, back to you.
Finally, Resolution COS 25-115, whereas the City of Summerside has received funds through the Housing Accelerator Fund program, which have been delegated to incentivize the redevelopment of existing properties. And whereas pursuant to the Municipal Government Act and amendments thereto, a municipality has the authority to establish a grant bylaw for the purpose of issuing grants and for establishing qualifying criteria that applicants must meet in order to obtain those grants. And whereas the Housing Accelerator Fund Incentive Bylaw, Bylaw CS 2502, was read and formally approved at 2 separate meetings of council held on different days. Therefore, be it resolved that the Housing Accelerator Fund HAF Incentive Bylaw, Bylaw CS 2502, be hereby formally adopted. Moved by myself, and I would ask for a seconder from council. Deputy Mayor Snow.
Thank you, Councillor. Resolution COS 25-115, moved by Councillor Doiron, seconded by Councillor Snow, is on the floor. Any further comments, questions, statements from members of council? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Show of hands again, please. 1, 2, 3, 4. Any opposed? And 3 nays. The ayes have it. The resolution is carried. Thank you, Councillor Doiron, for all of your work. Thank you, council. I'm looking forward to seeing this program put $500,000 into the pockets of residents for affordable housing in our community. At this point, we'll move into item 8, which is in camera. So I'll ask somebody, since Councillor Morrison is not here, our normal door closer, to close the door, and we will sign off from the internet and close the door and proceed with 3 items in camera. Thank you, Sandra. You can let us know when we're off. Thank you very much.